The observation deck of Zenith Station hummed with the voices of 1,000 different species. Crystalline beings chimed like wind through glass. Scaled merchants hissed their negotiations. Feathered diplomats trilled inharmonious debates. It was a symphony of galactic life, chaotic and beautiful in equal measure. But in the corner of the Integration Center's communal area, one small figure sat alone. Krisha pressed her back against the cold metal wall, her crystalline body dim and gray. Tears streamed down her translucent cheeks, pooling at her chin before dropping to the floor with soft plinks. Each tear crystallized on impact, creating tiny prisms that caught the station's artificial light. A group of young Phyrexian children passed by, their multiple eyes swiveling to observe her. The tallest one clicked his mandibles in disgust. Still crying, he said to his companions, 3 days now. Does her species do anything else? His friends chittered in agreement before moving on, their 6 legs carrying them swiftly away from the uncomfortable display. Krisha heard every word. Her people, the Valerians, were empaths. She felt their contempt like needles against her skin, but she could not stop crying. How could she? 2 weeks ago, she had watched her home collapse into nothing. The stellar anomaly had consumed her colony world in minutes. Her parents, her siblings, her friends, everyone she had ever known, gone in a flash of terrible light. The Galactic Council had been efficient. They rescued survivors, processed them through medical checkups, and assigned them to integration centers across known space. Krisha had been given a small room, 3 meals a day, and access to educational programs. By galactic standards, she was fortunate. But she was 8 years old and utterly alone. Pathetic display. A voice rumbled above her. Krisha looked up to see a massive Corthian standing over her, his insect-like face unreadable. He was one of the center's junior supervisors. Your people survived the void itself for millennia. This weakness dishonors their memory. Krisha tried to speak, but only a sob escaped her throat. The Corthian made a sound of disapproval and walked away. An hour passed. The communal area emptied as other orphans went to their lessons or recreational activities. Krisha remained in her corner, her small body shaking with silent grief. She had learned not to cry loudly. That only brought more attention, more criticism, more disappointed stares from the adults who were supposed to care for her. The station administrator, Vextol, appeared with his datapad, his facial tendrils twitching as he read reports. He noticed Krisha and sighed, a sound like air escaping a pressure valve. "Child, you must attend your integration classes," he said, his tone bureaucratic and weary. "Grief is natural, but it must be processed efficiently. We have protocols, meditation chambers, therapeutic neural adjustment. You cannot simply sit here day after day." Krisha looked at him with her large, violet eyes. "I miss my mother," she whispered. Vextol's tendrils stiffened. Emotional directness made him uncomfortable. "Yes, well, we all experience loss. The galaxy is vast and often cruel. You must adapt." He made a notation on his pad. "I am scheduling you for mandatory counseling. A Zerithian therapist will see you tomorrow." He walked away before she could respond. The artificial day cycle dimmed, signaling evening hours. Most of the younger orphans were herded to their sleeping quarters by tired staff members. Krisha remained in her corner, hoping that if she stayed very still and very quiet, everyone would forget she existed. 2 Valerian orphans, both older than Krisha, passed by on their way to dinner. She recognized them from the transport ship. They were from a different colony, one that had survived the anomaly. They had only lost some relatives. Not everyone. "Krisha," the older one called out, "you need to eat. Come with us." Krisha shook her head. The younger Valerian frowned. "You are making our people look weak. The other species already think we are too soft, too emotional. Stop crying and show some strength." They left without waiting for her response. Krisha pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. Her crystalline skin had lost almost all its natural luminescence. In the dim light of the station's evening cycle, she was nearly invisible, a ghost of a child in a corner of a place that had no room for grief. She closed her eyes and wished for her mother's voice, her father's laugh, her sister's hand in hers. But there was only silence and the distant hum of a station that kept spinning, indifferent to one small alien's broken heart. Marcus Chun pushed his cargo cart through the crowded corridors of Zenith Station, checking his delivery manifest for the third time that morning. 15 crates of medical supplies, 20 containers of preserved food, and one very specific package for the diplomatic wing. It was routine work, the kind he had done 1,000 times across a dozen stations. He turned a corner into the Integration Center's main corridor, taking a shortcut to the loading docks. That was when he heard the sound. It was quiet, almost buried under the general noise of the station. A soft, crystalline tinkling, like small bells breaking. Marcus stopped, his hand still on the cart. He knew that sound. Crying. Someone was crying. He followed the sound to the communal area. The space was mostly empty now, just a few staff members reviewing data pads in the far corner. But against the wall, barely visible in the shadow, sat a small figure with translucent skin that caught the light like fractured glass. Marcus had seen many species in his 15 years working cargo routes. He recognized a Valerian child when he saw one. This one looked no older than 7 or 8. Her whole body seemed to be made of tears. A group of teenage aliens walked past her, laughing among themselves. One of them, a reptilian species Marcus did not recognize, looked at the crying child and made a hissing sound. "Still here, Crystal Girl? Do you ever stop?" His friends laughed. They did not stop walking. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He had felt this feeling before years ago, when the world had seemed too cruel and too large. He left his cart by the wall and walked slowly toward the child. She did not look up when his shadow fell across her. She just kept crying, her small hands pressed against her face. Marcus said nothing. He simply sat down beside her, his back against the same wall, his legs stretched out in front of him. He was quiet. He did not ask questions. He did not tell her to stop crying. He just sat there. Minutes passed. The child's crying continued, but gradually she lowered her hands. She glanced at him from the corner of her eye, confused. Marcus stared straight ahead, his hands folded in his lap. More time passed. A station worker approached them, a tall being with too many joints in his arms. "Human, do you need assistance?" the worker asked. "Is this child bothering you?" "No," Marcus said simply. "We are fine." The worker looked between them, clearly puzzled, but eventually walked away. The child's crying began to quiet, not because anyone had told her to stop, but because something in the silence felt safe. Marcus continued to sit, patient and still. Finally, after what might have been 30 minutes, the child spoke. "Why are you sitting here?" Her voice was small and hoarse from crying. "Seemed like you could use some company," Marcus replied. He did not look at her when he spoke. He kept his eyes forward, giving her space. "I am not good company," she whispered. "Everyone says so." "I disagree." Silence fell again. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that exists between two people who understand that words are not always necessary. Marcus came back the next day. He found the same child in the same corner. This time she was not crying as hard, but tears still ran down her crystalline cheeks. He sat beside her again without speaking. He brought a small smooth stone from Earth, gray and ordinary, and placed it between them. The child looked at it, but said nothing. On the third day, other orphans began to notice. They whispered to each other, pointing at the strange human, who did nothing but sit. "What is he doing?" asked a young Phyrexian. "Nothing," replied his friend. "Humans are odd. But why does he keep coming back?" No one had an answer. By the 5th day, the child spoke more. Her name was Krisha. She told him about her world, about the light that swallowed everything, about her mother who had been holding her hand when it happened. Marcus listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions. He just listened. On the 7th day, Marcus told her about his daughter, about the accident, about how the world had seemed gray and empty afterward, about how some days all he had needed was someone to sit with him in the silence. Krisha looked at him with her large violet eyes. "You understand," she said. "I understand," he replied. That day, Krisha's crystalline body glowed just a little brighter. It was not much, but it was something. And in the corner of Zenith Station, two people who had lost everything sat together, finding something in the silence that all the galaxy's words could not provide. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus first sat beside Krisha. The cargo specialist had adjusted his delivery schedule to ensure he always had time to visit the integration center. Sometimes he brought small things, a picture of Earth's oceans, a piece of cloth with an interesting texture, a data chip containing simple human music. He never explained why he brought these items. He simply placed them between them and let Krisha decide if she wanted to touch them or ignore them. Today, Krisha held the smooth stone he had given her on that first day. She turned it over in her small hands, feeling its weight and coolness. "My sister collected stones," she said quietly. She had 47 of them, all different colors. She kept them in a box under her sleeping platform. Marcus nodded. "What was her name?" "Shrare. She was 6. She wanted to be a healer when she grew up." Krisha's voice cracked slightly, but she did not cry. She used to sing to her stones. She said each one had a different song. "That is beautiful," Marcus said. "I cannot remember all the songs," Krisha whispered. "I am forgetting. What if I forget everything?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke carefully. "I cannot remember my daughter's voice anymore. Not exactly. I remember that it was high and happy. I remember that she laughed easily. But the exact sound is gone now." He paused. "It hurt at first. I thought forgetting meant losing her twice. But then I realized something. The love does not need me to remember every detail. The love stays even when the memories fade." Krisha looked at him with wet eyes. "Does it hurt less now?" "It hurts differently," Marcus replied honestly. "Some days are harder than others. But I can breathe now. I could not breathe for a long time after she died." They sat in silence after that, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It was understanding. A small sound made them both look up. Standing a few feet away was another orphan, a young Corthian with green-tinted carapace. He was small for his species, barely 4 feet tall. His compound eyes were fixed on Marcus and Krisha. The Corthian took one hesitant step forward, then stopped. His mandibles clicked nervously. Marcus glanced at Krisha, then gestured to the empty space beside him. "There is room here if you want it." The Corthian's antennae twitched. For a long moment, he did not move. Then, slowly, he walked over and sat down. He kept his distance, leaving a foot of space between himself and Marcus, but he sat. Marcus said nothing. He simply acknowledged the Corthian's presence with a small nod and returned to his comfortable silence. Minutes passed. The Corthian's rigid posture began to relax slightly. His antennae stopped twitching so frantically. "My hive was destroyed in the war," the Corthian said suddenly, his voice a series of clicks and whistles that the station translator converted to standard speech. "The enemy burned it completely. I was in the underground tunnels gathering food. I heard the screams through the walls." Krisha reached out slowly and placed her small hand on the floor between them, palm up. The Corthian looked at it for a moment, then carefully placed one of his clawed hands over hers. They said nothing more, but the connection was made. Over the next few days, others began to notice the small group. A Felixian orphan, covered in soft fur and missing one ear, approached them nervously. Marcus made room. A Zephyrian, barely visible in his energy form, hovered nearby for an hour before settling down with them. Then came a human child, a girl no older than 10, who had lost her family in a station explosion. She sat closest to Marcus, and he rested his hand gently on her shoulder. The staff members watched with confusion and growing interest. Administrator Vextol stood in the doorway one afternoon, his data pad forgotten in his hand, as he observed the silent group. 6 different species. 6 orphans who had been labeled as difficult or damaged or beyond help, all sitting together in companionable quiet. "What is he doing?" Vextol asked a passing medical officer. The officer, a Valerian herself, watched the scene with something like wonder in her eyes. "I think," she said slowly, "he is doing what we forgot how to do. He is simply being with them." Vextol looked skeptical. "That is not a treatment protocol. That is not therapy. That is nothing." Perhaps, the medical officer replied. But look at them. Really look. Vextol did, and for the first time he saw Krishaw's crystalline body glowing with a soft, steady light. Administrator Vextol stood in his office, staring at the data on his screen with growing confusion. The psychological assessment reports for 6 orphans had changed dramatically over the past 3 weeks. Stress hormones down by 40%, sleep patterns normalizing, aggression incidents reduced to 0, participation in group activities increasing steadily. All 6 orphans had one thing in common. They spent time with the human cargo worker. Vextol summoned Marcus to his office the following morning. The human arrived still wearing his work uniform, smelling faintly of the station's recycled air and metal. "Mr. Chun," Vextol began, his tendrils twitching with barely contained curiosity. "I need to understand your technique. What treatment protocol are you using with the orphans?" Marcus looked genuinely confused. "Treatment protocol? I am not using anything like that." "Then what are you doing?" Vextol leaned forward. "We have therapists, counselors, medical professionals. None of them achieve these results. You are a cargo worker with no psychological training. Yet 6 of our most difficult cases have improved under your care. I must document your method." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I just sit with them. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we do not. That is all." Vextol's tendrils went rigid. "That cannot be all. There must be more. A specific dialogue pattern, a behavioral modification system, chemical intervention." "No," Marcus said simply. "I just show up. I sit with them. I listen when they want to talk. I stay quiet when they do not." The administrator made a frustrated sound. "That is not efficient. That is not a solution. That is barely even an intervention." Marcus stood up to leave. "With respect, administrator, maybe that is exactly what they need. Not a solution. Just someone who shows up." Over the following week, Vextol observed Marcus more carefully. He watched the human arrive at the integration center every day at the same time. He watched Marcus sit with a growing group of orphans, sometimes for hours, doing nothing that could be quantified or measured. There were no structure activities, no therapeutic exercises, just presence. The medical officer who had spoken to Vextol before approached him again. Her name was Telmaya, and she was one of the few Valerians on staff. "I would like to try the human's approach with some of my other patients," she said. Vextol looked at her with surprise. "You are a trained professional. You want to abandon your education to simply sit silently." "Not abandon," Telmaya corrected. "Supplement. Our methods work for many patients. But for trauma this deep, maybe we need something else. Something older. Something simpler." Vextol reluctantly agreed to let her try. Telmaya began sitting with a young Phyrexian who had not spoken since arriving at the station 2 months ago. She brought no equipment, no medications, no therapeutic tools. She simply sat beside the child during meal times, saying nothing, demanding nothing. After 5 days, the Phyrexian child spoke his first words. After 10 days, he was eating regularly again. Word spread through the staff. Some were skeptical. A Korthian therapist named Zextal was particularly vocal in his opposition. "This is primitive," he declared in a staff meeting. "We have evolved beyond such simplistic approaches. We have science. We have proven methodologies. This human is making these children dependent on emotional crutches. Are they dependent?" Telmaya challenged. "Or are they healing?" "There is no data to support this approach," Zextal insisted. "The data is right there," she pointed to the assessment reports. "The children are improving." The debate continued for days. Some staff members tried Marcus's approach and found success. Others dismissed it entirely. The integration center became divided between those who believed in the old protocols and those willing to try something new. Then the formal complaint arrived. 3 species representatives submitted official protests to the Galactic Council. They argued that Marcus was interfering with proper orphan processing. They claimed he was encouraging weakness and emotional instability. They demanded his removal from the station. Vextol found himself in an impossible position. The data supported Marcus's results, But the political pressure was mounting. He called Marcus to his office once more. "The council is demanding answers," Vextol said, his voice tired. "They want you gone. They say you are disrupting established procedures." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand. I will stop coming to the center." "Wait," Vextol said, surprising himself. "I am not ordering you to stop. Not yet. But I need you to explain this to the council representatives. Make them understand what you are doing and why it works." Marcus looked doubtful. "I am not good at explaining. I just do it." "Then you must try," Vextol said, "because if you cannot convince them, they will shut this down. And those children will lose the one thing that has helped them." Marcus thought of Krisha, of her growing light. He thought of the Corthian boy who finally spoke about his hive. He thought of all of them. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Vextol replied. The representatives arrived tomorrow. The council chamber was cold and formal. 3 species representatives sat behind a raised platform, their faces showing varying degrees of disapproval. Marcus stood before them in his work uniform, feeling completely out of place. The Threxian representative spoke first, his multiple eyes fixed on Marcus with obvious disdain. "You are disrupting centuries of established orphan care protocols. You have no training, no credentials, no authority. Why should we allow you to continue?" Marcus took a breath. "Because the children are getting better. Better is subjective," the Zephyrian representative said, her energy form flickering with irritation. "Our methods are proven. Efficient. Your approach is chaos disguised as compassion. My approach is just sitting with them," Marcus said quietly, letting them know they are not alone. The 3rd representative, a massive Corthian with battle scars across his carapace, leaned forward. "You are teaching them to wallow in grief. In my culture, weakness is not tolerated. Pain must be overcome quickly, not indulged." Marcus met his eyes. "With respect, they are children. They have lost everything. They do not need to overcome it quickly. They need time to feel it." The Threxian made a dismissive gesture. "Emotional indulgence serves no purpose. We will be recommending your immediate removal from the integration center. This hearing is merely a formality." Before Marcus could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. Vextol burst into the chamber, his tendrils trembling with distress. "We have a situation," he gasped. "A transport just arrived with 12 new orphans from the Hadric system. War refugees. They are violent, traumatized, and our staff cannot control them. 3 workers are injured. The children have barricaded themselves in the recreation area and are destroying everything." The Corthian representative stood. "Use restraints. Sedate them if necessary. Standard protocol for dangerous arrivals." "We tried," Vextol said desperately. "They are fighting sedation. Their species has unusual biochemistry. Physical restraints only make them more violent." Everyone looked at Marcus. The human understood what was being asked without words being spoken. "Take me to them," he said. The recreation area was a disaster. Furniture was overturned. Equipment was smashed. 12 children, all reptilian with sharp claws and powerful tails, were huddled in the center of the room. The oldest could not have been more than 13. They hissed and snapped at anyone who approached. Their eyes were wild with terror and rage. Security personnel stood at the entrance, weapons drawn but not fired. They looked relieved when Marcus arrived, though confused about what he could possibly do. Marcus did not hesitate. He walked slowly into the room, his hands visible and empty. The children immediately focused on him, their bodies tensing for attack. He sat down on the floor about 10 feet away from them. He did not speak. He did not approach further. He just sat. One of the children, a female with a scarred snout, lunged forward and screamed at him in her own language. The translator could not keep up with the rapid, anguished sounds. But Marcus did not need translation. He heard the pain underneath. He remained still. Minutes passed. The children stayed in their defensive cluster, but their hissing quieted slightly. Then Krisha appeared at the doorway, her crystalline body glowing softly in the red emergency lights. She walked past the security guards and sat down beside Marcus. The Corthian boy followed. then the human girl, then the Felixian. One by one, all 6 of Marcus's regular orphans entered the room and sat in a loose circle around him. They said nothing. They did not approach the traumatized children. They simply created a ring of calm presence. The scarred female watched them with confusion. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. One of the younger children in her group began to cry, a deep, guttural sound of pure anguish. Krisha began to hum. It was one of the songs her sister used to sing. The Corthian boy clicked his mandibles in a rhythmic pattern. The human girl whispered something soft in her own language. Slowly, impossibly, the violent children began to calm. The crying one crawled forward slightly, then stopped, torn between fear and desperate need. Krisha held out her hand, palm up, just as she had done for the Corthian boy weeks ago. The crying child took another step, then another. Finally, she collapsed near Krisha, her whole body shaking with sobs. Krisha gently placed her hand on the child's scaled back. One by one, the other traumatized children broke. The rage that had protected them from their pain crumbled, and underneath was only grief. They did not attack. They cried. They screamed. They mourned. And Marcus's group sat with them through all of it. Hours later, the recreation area was quiet. 12 exhausted children slept in a pile in the center of the room, with Krisha and the others keeping gentle watch nearby. Marcus sat against the wall, his eyes closed. The 3 species representatives stood in the doorway, speechless. The Corthian representative was the first to speak. I have never seen anything like that. Vextol stepped forward. This is a human method. Presence without agenda. Acceptance without judgment. Perhaps it is time we learn from it. The Phyrexian representative hesitated, then nodded slowly. I will recommend a trial program, but we will need training, documentation. Marcus opened his eyes. I can try to teach what I know, but honestly it is simple. You just show up. You stay. You let them know they matter. 6 months later, Zenith Station's Integration Center had transformed. Staff members had learned to sit in silence, to offer presence before solutions, to let grief exist without rushing to fix it. The success rate for traumatized orphans had increased by 70%. Krisha, now 9 years old and glowing brightly, worked as a junior peer counselor. She sat with new arrivals, offering the same silent companionship that saved her. Marcus's cargo route eventually took him away from Zenith Station. On his last day, he found Krisha in their old corner. Thank you, she said simply, for sitting with me when no one else would. Marcus smiled. You did the hard part. You let yourself heal. Will you forget me? She asked. Never, Marcus replied. But even if the memories fade, the love stays. Remember? Krisha nodded, understanding now. She watched him leave, not with tears, but with gratitude. And when a new orphan arrived that evening, frightened and alone, Krisha knew exactly what to do. She sat down beside them in silence, and she waited, because sometimes that is all anyone needs.